One of the things that's jumped out has been the failure of the New South Wales Upper House to sit. Is this worrying you during a time when people are being confined to their homes and their activities are being restricted?
It does worry me, Chris, and it worries me because, of course, we're seeing at the moment the state government exercising some of the most extraordinary powers in its history. And it may be that's justified, but that's something that does need to be tested. In fact, the more extraordinary the power, the more vigilant the community needs to be, the more scrutiny there needs to be, the more opportunities for transparency. So at a time like this, just as it is during times of war and other crises, it's actually more important that our elected representatives can meet, can ask questions. That needs to be visible to the community to provide confidence, and those parliamentarians need to use their powers where required to access documents and to make sure that government is making good decisions and acting in the community interest.
What's the consequence if that doesn't happen?
Well, we are left bereft of arguably the most important accountability mechanism for any government, and that is Parliament. Things like question time, things like the ability to hold proper inquiries that can demand. I can understand why government is awfully busy at the moment, but it's just not acceptable to remove those forms of scrutiny and accountability. And I think we're poorer for that. We're poorer because governments, of course, when they're subject to that scrutiny, are always wondering, have we got it right? You know, we are going to be subject to the test. We are going to be questioned. Perhaps it's easier to put mistakes to one side that perhaps should have led to questions and changed approaches. And also, even though there may be inquiries and other things afterwards, there's nothing quite like contemporaneous scrutiny and accountability. And I think the community's the loser, but also our response is the loser, because I think without that form of accountability, the danger is we won't get it right.
As I understand it, the rule that's preventing the New South Wales Upper House from sitting is that the government needs to provide a minister to be in the Upper House. Is that does that need to be reassessed in the light of what we've seen?
I think it does, and I think perhaps with hindsight, people didn't realise how it could be misused and manipulated. Frankly, we just didn't see a possibility Parliament wouldn't sit. I mean, that's just what Parliament does. It takes something like a pandemic to lead us to re-question whether, in fact, that's always going to happen. So I think it actually would be wise to change that. I don't think we want governments being able to manipulate sittings by simply not providing a minister. And it should be clear that Parliament can sit even if a minister decides to boycott and try and frustrate the activities of the body.
So I don't think everyday Australians haven't realised that the MPs haven't been sitting, even though there are an essential service like a nurse. They have not actually met since June, even though they've given more health orders in the last 2 months. They've had less sittings. So they obviously need the sittings to trigger some accountability options.
Well, they do. And of course, at this time when we're confined to homes and many people have lost jobs, the last thing on their mind is, has Parliament sat today? So you can understand why it's not front of mind for many people. And in fact, you depend upon Parliament and the energy, the excitement that can bring to actually attract media attention and to educate people about what's going on. So it's pretty easy sometimes for Parliament just to work in a case like this. And it's why we need mechanisms and structures that actually demand the sitting, not just leaving it in a discretion, but to say, even if we're in a pandemic, well, at the very least, adapt. You know, everyone else can use Zoom and other technologies, get with the times, as the Commonwealth has. I really can't see any excuse for Parliament not sitting, given how adaptable other organisations have proved to be.
Do you think that would ease any community concern about restrictions on liberty, people being restricted to their homes, not being able to work? Do you think if people could see the fact that their elected representatives have at least considered these orders, there'd be less likely to be civil disobedience in the streets?
I do, and in fact, that's a mark of a civilised society, that where there's disagreement, you can have it debated in Parliament, you can bring an action in court. We have ways of raising issues that don't require people going to the streets, and perhaps it's not surprising people have gone to the streets when the normal mechanisms aren't available and when the courts, frankly, have little to do often in a case like this. So I think if we'd seen more of it, then people might have had an outlet for those concerns that has been lacking.